Minority Leader.
This week, thousands of law enforcement personnel from across America will descend on our nation's capital to pay solemn tribute to comrades killed in the line of duty. The entire nation joins them once again in honoring service and sacrifice as we mark National Peace Officers Memorial Day and add the names of fallen heroes to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial right here in Washington. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the officers and families who are in town this week. Our nation owes the Thin Blue Line a great debt for their dedication to keeping our communities safe. I'm especially grateful to Kentucky's law enforcement and honored to pay special tribute to one of the Commonwealth's finest who was killed in the line of duty just last year. Deputy Caleb Conley of Scott County Sheriff's Office was tragically shot and killed a year ago next week during a routine traffic stop in Georgetown. He leaves behind his wife and 2 children, and yesterday I had the privilege of meeting with members of the Conley family and assured them that their sacrifice is not forgotten. The loss of the heroes we honor this week leaves holes in tight-knit departments and devoted families, and their deaths are a reminder of the daily risk peace officers take to keep the rest of us safe. Of course, in this building, we're never far from men and women who swear oaths to run toward danger. And this political week, I hope our colleagues will join me in thanking the officers of the Capitol Police who guard this institution and honoring their comrades who've given their lives to defend it. On another matter, in cities across America, soft on crime policies are making the tough job of law enforcement even tougher. Earlier this month, President Biden declared that, quote, Americans are safer from violent crime today than a year ago. But even a quick look around our nation's capital shows that crime in many American cities is still unacceptably high. As of this past week, Washington, D.C. has already seen 63 homicides and much more than 1,700 car thefts in 2024. Among these crimes was the deadly shooting of a 3-year-old girl who was hit by a stray bullet in a passing car. The child, who is described as cheerful and chatty, was just one of the youngest in a long list of this crime wave's innocent victims. Last year, Washington saw homicides rise 35%. The city's murder rate reached the highest level in a quarter century, and less than halfway through 2024, cities across the country are still grappling with familiar problems. In Los Angeles, home break-ins are rising, and residents report that police are complaining that their hands are tied. In Chicago, police reports show that crime has increased 69% since 2021. In Philadelphia, the effort to fire a soft-on-crime district attorney has gone all the way to the state Supreme Court. Surely President Biden isn't declaring victory over the lawlessness threatening American communities. Surely the fact that violent crime is hovering beneath breathtaking highs isn't a cause for celebration. As the head of one Washington nonprofit focused on preventing gun crimes put it, quote, I know some of the repercussions that can come from taking a victory lap too soon. Then again, it's not surprising that from the White House to city halls across the country, Democrat leaders are downplaying concerns about violent crime If they looked this problem in the face, they'd have to admit that their own policies are to blame. It shouldn't have to be this way. The American people deserve safe streets, and law enforcement deserves elected leaders who back the blue. On another matter, for 3 consecutive months, major national polls have ranked immigration as the most important problem facing our country. And this year, for the first time, a majority of Americans say they support erecting physical barriers along our southern border. So perhaps it's not a coincidence that the Democratic leader has indicated his intention to once again turn the Senate's focus to the border crisis and to portions of the bipartisan legislation Senator Langford helped produce earlier this year. But in his own remarks on the subject yesterday, my colleague from New York seemed to acknowledge what we all know: the key to securing our southern border are already in the hands that created this crisis. As the Democratic leader proudly declared, President Biden is taking action to secure our border. Last week, he said the president began announcing a series of administrative actions. Last week, Mr. President, after 3 years on the job, apparently it's time to give the Commander-in-Chief kudos on his handling of a crisis that still lets nearly 5,000 people cross our border illegally in a day. Of course, President Biden does have the authorities he needs to start rapidly undoing the damage of the historic crisis that unfolded on his watch. How do we know? Because he voluntarily took them off the table on day one. Remain in Mexico, off the table. The border wall construction, a majority of Americans support, not a chance. Any sign at all this administration would like to actually secure the border? Don't hold your breath. So, Mr. President, the path out of the deepening border crisis is actually not a mystery. It just requires a president who's willing to stop digging. Now, on one final matter, I'd like to briefly commend several of our colleagues for their work on resolutions the Senate will consider to roll back yet another slate of Biden administration overreach. Today, we'll vote on a resolution from Senator Schmidt to finally put the brakes on the Treasury Department's extension of massive recovery funds for a pandemic emergency that has long since passed. Soon, we'll vote on another resolution under the Congressional Review Act from Senator Lummis that would repeal a hasty, short-sighted power grab by the SEC that hampers the deployment of new digital financial technologies. And in the coming days, we'll also vote on Senator Cruz's resolution to axe a new Department of Energy rule on gas furnace efficiency standards that threaten to drive a huge share, of existing residential furnace models out of the market and hike costs for seniors, small businesses, and low-income households. As always, I'm grateful to our colleagues for leading these efforts, and I would urge the Senate to pass each resolution.